Well, interesting question about what have been the major things that shaped my career, because basically I didn't want to be in the arts. I mean, I wanted to be a world rally champion. That was what I was aiming for. But because my dad was in the arts, because he was doing a lot of his stuff in playwriting, etc., I got wheedled in when I was about 14, 15, having to play different plays, having to do different things. And so in the end, I just really broke into the arts by accident, starting off as an actor, then moving to being director in theatre, etc., then moving into arts administration and development. So in terms of things that shaped me, most of it was about what am I meant to be doing in the arts. When you're an actor, you're sort of falling under the remit of everyone's idea of what you're doing. You're doing a script quite often, you're working in buildings, you're working with a lot of professional people, but in other cases, you're actually making it yourself. And when you're working on the Fringe in London, it sort of develops you in a way in which you actually work with people. Then when you go into arts administration and you start wanting to raise money, raising interest, increasing audiences, etc., it all becomes a very different thing to when you're performing. So, in effect, what shaped me more than anything, I think, was the arts development rather than actually the creation of art, which is sad because it should be the creation that should drive everything else. But arts development meant I had to talk to people about what they wanted and what audiences want, and how can you actually make that bridge between the artist and the actual audience, because that's the major bit that I think sometimes gets lost in a lot of funding decisions and gets lost a little bit in when we start making policy. So what I want to do is always look at that. So when we created the Crystal Palace concert platform, that was about people coming together and say, how can we use a structure because of the lottery programme that had just started and all the rest of it, how can we actually build something that people can use? Which we hope we did. However, I'm not sure it's being used now, which is sad. But as with a lot of capital projects that happen in the lottery, impetus fell away. The other thing, of course, was actually talking to a lot of arts groups when I was working in Bromley. First time I'd ever been a development officer in the arts. First time I'd ever started talking to arts companies, from amateur, as they're called, or whatever, through the voluntary, through to actual professional companies. And what's so amazing is the fact that most of them were working in isolation. No matter what status or what level of arts they were working in, they were all working alone. And by bringing them together, just giving a forum, and we wanted to ask them, well, what do they want to do about lottery funding, what do they want to do with things, I actually found it wasn't about investing in them or anything like that. It was about them being able to talk together. It was about them thinking about what's important for them rather than what's important for anything else. So what happened was that they tended to sort of see infrastructure as being not necessarily to do new build, but being able to use spaces. And most of the restrictions came because, I suppose it's the thing about health and safety and things like that, but restrictions came from ownership and fear of what using a space might mean. So being able to try and open up spaces, particularly from a council point of view, was really important. And then it became the fact of looking at, well, where's theatre going? And I am talking from a theatre perspective, because that's my background essentially, but where is theatre going? We've got a whole set of buildings. We have a regional theatre infrastructure. We have a lot of people working in buildings. In Bromley there was the Churchill Theatre, and then you have the whole of the West End, etc. So a lot of people, when they talk about theatre, is it with a capital T meaning a building, or is it the smaller T meaning the actual event of something? So when we actually got to theatre, we've got to start thinking, is it now going to be a lot more about theatre outside? Is it going to be about theatre in other buildings? We've had theatre put into office buildings that are defunct, into old mills, into old factories. We've had immersive theatre in rundown ex-Woolworths, etc. What is theatre going to be? What sort of infrastructure do we need to make it sustain itself? And what are artists wanting to develop? Who are the emerging artists, particularly in performance? So there's a lot of different things that are affecting me in the way that I'm operating now, I mean, the only reason I actually came into teaching at a university certainly wasn't the wealth of the things. I had to take about 3 times pay cut. But it was because a lot of people coming from universities, and they didn't really know an awful lot about how theatre operated. What are all the machinations that make theatre become real? A lot of them think it's just about performers, and unfortunately it isn't. Being a performer isn't necessarily the main people who drive making theatre. It's the writers, it's the people who put on the production of it. There's a whole network of things that are a lot bigger than just the performer, as I found out when you go into all these cattle markets to audition. So, yeah, I mean, the impact has been about seeing how other people operate, seeing the isolation of the artist, and seeing how basically just being able to talk and throw ideas out to people is a way of actually helping develop the arts in itself. So actually just seeing how isolated an artist can be is probably the thing that had the biggest impact on me. Change does happen a lot, and particularly in theatre, in buildings, whether they be museums, whether they be art galleries, whatever it is. A lot of them are from infrastructure that was built, say, 150 years ago, something like that. And the mode in which people lived was different, the way in which they planned their lives was different. And now, are we really changing with the way in which we work today? I mean, we sometimes work long hours, different hours, strange hours, and yet we still have a fixation on things either in the afternoon or in the evening for the arts. Yes, or at 2 o'clock, or it's going to be at 7:30, and that's maybe not a way in which we should work. And so organisations are tending to look at just an ordinary delivery model, whereby they're trying to organise how the art is produced and deliver it out there to people, when maybe what they need to do is look at, is this a way of delivering it? Should we be actually just sat here trying to do this sort of thing? Why don't we make it something that people want to actually not plan and buy 2, 3, 4 months in advance, but people can just turn up and experience it? It's the live experience is the thing that excites the audience more. So maybe we need to make some of our buildings just destination points, things that make people go in there because there's an event. Because we mustn't forget that when an audience member goes into something, it is an event for that person at that time. It may be part of a repetitive show that's going on, but we've got to stop thinking that we are delivering a repetitive show and that this is how we're going to organise it over the next 3 months or whatever, and start thinking each night is going to be its event in its own right, made up of what is being exhibited, whether it be a performance, whether it be a static, and with what the audience member is expecting from it, because it's that atmosphere at that moment that makes the experience. And already people in marketing use this a lot. They use event marketing to launch new cars, the new Mini World Rally Championship coming out, the new Porsches or whatever. They make it an event for the potential buyer. So we've got to think about how do we make what we might say a mundane run of a play, an event that night. A long-running exhibition. How do we make it an event each time someone comes? How do we make it new for all those people? Back when I was working for British Telecom, we created a thing called Phone Power or whatever, and it was about how do we get telemarketing to work, because we were trying to sell using the phone. Now, obviously, I contributed to what is the bane of everyone's life now, of people ringing up and asking us about double glazing or whatever. But in that, the whole thing was always to remember that although it was a repeat call you were making, it was the first call to the person at the other end. And I think in the arts sometimes we've forgotten that every time an audience member comes through, it's the first time. And it's that first time that we've got to try and get in. So maybe the structures that we use, which to a degree aid business and commercial structures, aren't the right ones. Maybe, yes, we do need financial expertise, yes, we do need business planning expertise, yes, we do need creation and space to actually develop new work. But shouldn't we also be thinking, are there other things that we need, or do we need them in those structures that we have? So we all have these proto boards, we all have like the top chief executive, the finance director. Is that really the way to make art?
is there a different model that we can look at? There are models being thought of and things like that, but we also have this model of using, well, the charitable status model. Now, charities have to be about delivering what they deliver, and also not allowing the charity to actually go into any sort of default, etc. So it has to be risk averse, whereas we would say creativity and innovation is probably risk enhanced. So how do we create a model that people can believe in that allows risk enhancement, because it goes against all the ways in which we would think. So yeah, I mean, the challenges we've got is how do we organise ourselves, how do we make the experience with the audience better, and how do we stop just delivering on a very basic model, because it's that basic model is the thing that worries me, in as much as we're trying to pretend we're producing a can of baked beans. We're trying to, you know, we have a production line and all we were doing is delivering it to the customer. And actually what we want is the customer to challenge us and for us to be challenging. And as I said previously, it's about that bridge. I don't know if really our institutions, the way we've constructed them, are open to be able to talk to the customer that way. In the same way as a lot of ordinary industry has that same problem. How do they talk to the customers? How do they make customers understand what they're trying to do? So, yeah, I think the biggest challenge we've got is how do we work within the constraints that we have? How do we create an open way of delivering to our customers? And how do we give people space to create things that we may not have planned? So a planned economy doesn't really work otherwise.
Mm-hmm.